Add excitement to your holidays with Ohio Lottery Holiday Scratch-Offs, including $1 holiday cash and $5 holiday lucky times 10, or Holiday Bonus Millions with a 200 times multiplier and a $2 million top prize. Plus, enjoy second chance drawings where you can win 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times the price of your ticket. Scratch-offs make the perfect gift, and best of all, there's no wrapping required. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Play responsibly.
Welcome to Mind Love, episode 333. Today's episode is all about how to build a life rich in experiences and die with no regrets.
Maybe I'm not the type of person that can climb a mountain or plant a million trees or, even something as simple as go skydiving. I'm not that type of person, but I want to do it, but I'm not that person. But you can be, you just have to take those steps towards it. And then you're going to see yourself in a new light. Like if I would have thought, when I was a kid, I'm going to, write a book or start a company or whatever, I would have been like, that's so daunting, but you can't look at this big daunting thing. You have to look at what can I do in the next 24 hours that's going to move this forward. And then if I just do that every single day, eventually it's going to happen. And there's a snowball effect where it's okay, all of these things start happening. Like right now, it's we, spent 2 years on the book and we didn't know if anyone was going to like it, right? But now it's out and it's done, and the response has been so positive and so good, and it feels so good to share it with people.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
If this is your first time giving your mind a little love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Mind love is a habit, and the more you give your mind that love and intention, the better you'll feel about yourself and your life. Plus, it's really a win-win because more subscribers means Mind Love attracts even more amazing guests to bring you their wisdom. So don't forget to subscribe. What if you were tasked with creating joy on purpose? What would you do? This question really makes you stop and think. We spend so much time chasing after what we believe will bring us joy. More money, a bigger home, a fancier car. But if we were to distill joy into its purest form, in this very moment, would any of those material things even play a role? Think back to your earliest, most joyful memories. What do they all have in common? For me, there's novelty to them. There's something about them that doesn't usually happen. A deviation from the everyday, so they stand out and get encoded as core memories. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. For me, embracing adulthood had a lot to do with establishing routines. Back in my 20s, I was all about living in the moment. Bender weekends, impromptu road trips, the thrill of not knowing where I'd end up sleeping, or who with. Worst flex ever. My car was practically my second home. Life was just one big, unpredictable adventure. Now, I genuinely love my routines. They aren't just a set of tasks, they're a reflection of who I am and what matters to me. These routines are what keep me anchored. They're the rhythm to my day, keeping me productive, healthy, and frankly, sane. But here's the thing I've been figuring out, especially now with kids in the picture. As awesome as my routines are, they need a little zing every now and then. Even the most rock-solid routines can get a bit, routine, if you know what I mean. It's like when you get a new car. It's all shiny and exciting at first, but after a while, even a Porsche just becomes the car you drive. Nothing special. With kids, we have realized that it's up to us to create their experiences. It's a lot of responsibility, but it also forces us to think creatively. But I'm realizing it's not just about making things magical for my little ones. I need a bit of that magic too. So here's my question. When was the last time you just did something for the sheer fun of it? I'm not talking about big vacations or meticulously planned outings. I mean those little impromptu acts of joy, like diving into a pile of leaves, fully knowing that you have to rake them up again. Or maybe having a random dance-off in your living room, or deciding to cook a super fancy dinner on a Tuesday night just for kicks. Or maybe it is about those bigger dreams, like finally taking that trip you've always talked about, starting that business you've always talked about, riding in a hot air balloon, learning to snowboard, regardless of your age. These moments, big or small, are what make life vibrant. They add a splash of color to our everyday existence. They remind us that joy isn't just about grand gestures or milestones. It's often in those spontaneous, simple things that leave a lasting impression. So that's what we're talking about today. Our guest is Bridget Hilton. She's an expert in living a rich, experience-filled life. As a teenager, she hustled her way into the biggest record label in the world, helping to launch the careers of some major music stars that we know today. And her life took a turn when she saw a video of a deaf woman hearing for the first time. This inspired her to start Listen Sound Co., a company that's all about giving back. They've sold millions of products, worked with big names like Google, Delta Airlines, Amazon. They've been featured on The Today Show, GMA, The New York Times. But the real highlight? Traveling the world and giving over 50,000 people the gift of hearing. And now she's out inspiring others as a keynote speaker, co-author of the Experiential Billionaire book and Treasure Maps card game. Her passion is all about helping people improve their mental health and live intentional, regret-free lives by chasing fulfilling goals. So 3 key things we will learn are the game-changing power of tiny actions, the surprising secret to happiness from the Harvard study on relationships and experiences, and how to regret-proof your life with one simple exercise. Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up or text the word morning to 33777. And now let's welcome Bridget Hilton to the show.
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what originally inspired your idea of experiential billionaires?
Sure. So it's kind of a longer story, I guess, but I'll start when I first started my my other company called Listen, and I had been working in the music industry previously, and I saw this video on YouTube of a woman that was the same age as me hearing for the first time. And that experience of seeing that video led me to start a company that gives people the gift of hearing. And what we do is we sell headphones and speakers and other audio products, but we give the proceeds to help giving people around the world hearing aids. And it was like, we've been doing that. Me and my business partner, Joe, have been doing that for the last 11 years. And it's just been the most incredible experience of our lives. And to make the story very much shorter than it was, we condensed the last 11 years. We never saw like crazy financial success. Like the whole thing was a very like roller coastery experience. But there was like times during that I was on these lists like Forbes 30 under 30 or Inc 30 under 30 and things like that. And it became kind of this inside joke with me and my business partner, because people would be reaching out to us and being like, "Oh my God, you guys are like killing it right now," and like asking to like borrow money. And the funny thing is that we were just giving away all of our money to fund these trips around the world to help people hear. And so I would respond to them and be like, I'm not a billionaire. I didn't sell like, beats to Apple like Dr. Gray did, but I am an experiential billionaire. Because we were having all these experiences that I couldn't even imagine. Like when I was growing up, I grew up like super blue collar and like came from nothing. And I was doing all these things I couldn't even imagine myself doing when I was a kid. And in those experiences, like helping so many people, we ended up giving over 50,000 people the gift of hearing. And that experience to me was worth like any, I would take that over any amount in a bank account. So it was kind of just this like ongoing joke of like, we're experiential billionaires, but we don't actually have that much money.
That actually reminds me of when I launched Mind Love. I had a marketing mindset and I ended up growing it really quickly to where it was only about 4 months after I launched that I was getting asked to speak at podcasting conferences. And I was lucky to where about 6 months in, I started being able to get sponsors. But I quit my job to just go full force on this. And mind you, my job was making me miserable. And so I probably would have quit even if I didn't have something lined up and figured something out. But so many people would come up to me at those conferences and it's just like, oh yeah, well, you're killing it. And they'd almost like say it, be strategizing about how to make more money with their podcast and then just sort of brush me to the side. And I'm like, wait, bring me into these conversations. Like I am doing really well with my podcast, but I focused on the growth. I didn't even focus on really turning it into something profitable until about a year in. And so there was like this 6-month period of time where it was a very weird mindset because it was creating an imposter syndrome that I wasn't asking for. Like people were putting me in this box that I never really, like I didn't go in and say, and now I'm making $500,000 a year with my show. I was just like, no. I could talk to you about the growth part, but could somebody talk to me about what else you're doing?
Right. Totally. Understandable.
So is that what initially led you to start kind of questioning society's definition of wealth and making that connection between experiences and fulfillment?
Yeah, because, when I was a kid, growing up, like I just wanted to be rich, like the typical way of rich. I was like dreaming of like someday I grew up in Flint, Michigan, and I would think about someday I want to move to LA and like get a mansion like I saw in like, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or something, and I would want like some fancy car or whatever. But like, because we're never taught that our experiences are the most important part of our life. We're taught that like currency times a lot equals like a happy life. And that's not really true. I mean, money, I'm not anti-money whatsoever. The book is not about that. It's more about that you should be investing in your actual experiences over anything else. And so yeah, with the book, we just, we went really deep. After COVID hit, we kind of sat down and we were like, well, we're not traveling right now. We're not giving people hearing, which was like our purpose. And we were like, what is our purpose if that's not there? And we started asking our friends and family, like, what can we do to help other people? And everyone came back and said the same thing. And it's like, you should tell your stories because you've been doing all this inspirational stuff around the world. And like you haven't really been like telling it to everyone, and like you should go speak and you should write. And like that's how we kind of even got the idea to write a book in the first place. And then we started asking friends and family and like people that we knew, like what the most valuable experiences of their life were, and if they had any big regrets in life, and how they could kind of turn around that regret if they still had time. And then we started reading all these studies, like 3 out of 4 people at the end of their life say that they regret the things that they didn't do instead of the things that they did. So all these things kind of like started building. Then we started going to retirement homes and talking to elderly people about what they regretted in their life and like what they wish that they still had time to do. And it was just mind blowing. And all of these things came. And then we ended up, honestly, we had 20,000 plus people that we interviewed for this book. So it's quite a big project. But at the end of the day, the answers were all, people value their relationships and the experiences they have in those relationships, whether it's friendships or, romantic relationships or with their colleagues or, family or whatever. And it's really like nobody asks to see their wallet one last time at the hospital when they're dying. They all want to be with their family. They want to talk about the things that they did. It's not, nobody has like died with 10 million in the bank on their tombstone. We got really, really deep with this stuff. And after talking to 20,000 people, it was just very obvious that like, even though we're not taught this, it is the most important thing in life is to focus on your experiences. And that's how you become more fulfilled and regret-free at the end.
I interviewed a man named Mark Schultz who worked on Harvard's longest standing study on happiness. And so much of it came back to the experiences and relationships. And it is so ironic that so many of us start our lives chasing this dollar amount. I recently had babies. I have a toddler and an 8-month-old, and I've been trying to be very intentional about the messages that I give him. And we're lucky to be At least right now, the plan is homeschool. Who knows? One thing I've learned from parenting is a lot of the times I plan something, and then when it actually gets to it, I'm like, how? Oh, how nice.
That's everyone. That's every single parent. They're like, before they have kids, they're like, I'm never going to let them have a screen or whatever. And then it's like, you just fall into that because it's so much easier sometimes.
Oh my gosh, especially for travel. We're still trying to be intentional about that, but it is definitely in our lives. You know what's funny? We spend so much time feeding our minds, reading books, listening to podcasts, learning new things, but then we grab whatever's convenient to feed our bodies. And I get it. Life is busy, and sometimes a drive-through feels like the only option. But that's why I take Field of Greens. It's a greens powder made with whole organic fruits and vegetables. No extracts, no lab-made stuff, and just 1 scoop a day gives you simple, real nutrition. Field of Greens feeds your body with fruits and vegetables medically chosen to support your heart, vital organs, and immune system. And let me tell you something. Since I started taking it, I've noticed these little changes that show me how nutrient depleted I must have been before. Like the ridges in my nails, gone. My sleep, so much better. And my stomach just feels happy. You know that dreaded afternoon crash that has you reaching for more coffee or sugary snacks? Well, that's not happening for me anymore. When your body is actually nourished, it runs so much better. I've tried other greens powders before, but Field of Greens is genuinely different. The quality is next level and you can taste it. It's become my go-to, especially on those days when my eating isn't exactly Instagram worthy, because we all have those days, right? And here's the thing. They are so confident that you'll love it too, that they offer a 100% money-back guarantee. That's how much they believe in their product. So I got you 15% off your first order and free rush shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code MINDLOVE. That's promo code MINDLOVE at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. I don't know why it took me so long to invest in good bedding. I resisted it for years, but something flipped in me about 3 years ago. And now I'm basically a pillow connoisseur. I've tried them all, and I get weirdly excited about good bedding. Because here's the thing, we spend a third of our lives in bed, and the quality of that time affects literally everything else, which is why I'm so excited to tell you about my latest obsession, Lagoon Sleep Pillows. What sets them apart is their matching system. You take a quick 2-minute quiz about your sleep style and your preferences, and then they match you with your perfect pillow. I was matched with their Otter pillow, and I am so impressed. Lately, I've just needed more support, and this seems to cradle me in all the right places. I'm also low-key obsessed with their travel pillow, which I use for way more than just travel. I actually hug it, use it as leg support, and of course, take it on trips with me. Well, the secret is in their adjustable fill. You can add or remove it to get that perfect alignment for your spine. A study even found that the right supportive pillow can improve sleep quality by 63%. And Lagoon lets you try their matched pillow for 100 nights risk-free. Free returns, no questions asked. Falling asleep has never been easier. I toss and turn less and just wake up feeling refreshed every morning. Go to lagoonsleep.com and take their awesome 2-minute sleep quiz to find your match. Use the code MIND for 15% off your first purchase. I remember, like, even when I met my husband, we kind of bonded with our entrepreneurial minds, and we both had these dollar amounts, like, I'm going to be wildly successful. But when I said wildly successful, what my mind was creating was like an amount of cash and a type of lifestyle. And what I've learned over my now, 6 years of doing this business, but probably like 10 years of really, or 15 years of really diving into entrepreneurship, the transformation has really come in the last half of that whole journey, though, is that's not the goal whatsoever anymore. And somehow, without focusing on it as much, it's just coming. And I think it's because I'm getting clearer on what actually makes a difference, not just in my lives, but in the people that I serve, what that lifestyle would look like. Like, I'm no longer sitting there manifesting piles of money. I'm like, Okay, yes, I would like to increase this amount of income, but it's to give my children this type of lifestyle, or I want to have this opportunity, or I want to bring this into our lives, or I want to be able to grow this platform and share it with this amount of people. And there's something that just clicks in that, because I'm going to take like something very obvious, like a sales call. That's something you learn in the beginning of entrepreneurship. It's like, oh, it's all about the mindset. And it is. And like now, if I offered something that was a higher price, I would be coming at it with such a different energy, because I know what it takes. I know the commitment. I know what my overall goal is. And it's not like I'm sitting there on the other side, like, okay, I'm asking for this amount. Do you think I'm worth it? Like it's just a whole different energy. And so that's not even just with like money making opportunities. It's how I'm creating my life. And it's just so interesting how the clearer I get on the kinds of experiences that I want in my life, it's almost like they just are falling into my lap. Just yesterday, I had somebody called me and basically asked me for something that I was going to pitch to her. I already had it planned out. I was just going to do it in like 4 weeks from now. And so I know a big part of what you teach around these experiences is getting really clear on the experiences that you want. What's your process for that, and why do you find it important?
First of all, I love everything that you just said. I think it's so true. Like once you find your like authentic self and like what you really want and what's important to you, things become more clear and like almost easier in a way. And like if you think about like, I'm just going to make money so I can trade that currency for the experiences that I want, versus like just making money isn't really like, that doesn't mean anything, right? But if you're like, I want to take my kid to do X, I have to like make this much money. It makes it so much more like that you actually are inspired and motivated to work more and to do that money. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to get some fictional number. So I love that. So for me, I do a bunch of different things around this. I'm really, really into like, figuring out what I want and going after it and being extremely intentional, whether it's something with work or whether it's something in like, in a relationship or in, travel, for example. So one thing that I do every year on January 1st is this exercise that we have called the treasure map. And I love this exercise. It's basically, what if your doctor called you and was like, you have 1 year left to live? And suddenly your time is finite, right? You don't have like this fictional someday. You only have 1 year. And so I think about this on January 1st. I'm like, what if I only had this year? What would I do? And I write down like the top 10 things that I would do in 1 year. And then I think about, what about if I had 1 month? And what if I had 1 day? What are those things that I would do? And I want to make sure that I do as many of those things possible in that year. So I'll be doing this for 2024 very soon. And I'm already thinking of certain things, but it kind of makes it, the exercise makes it finite versus like, oh, I want to, someone might say, I want to travel the world someday. It's like, well, that's not a real goal, right? It's going to take a long time. And if you don't go to one place this year or 2 places this year, you're not going to like build up to that. You have to actually like do those things. So last year, like on January 1st, 2023, I wrote down like, I want to go to India. And I swear to God, like the week after that, I got an invite out of the blue to go to India. Like that never happens, right? But that was just like a crazy example. Obviously, I still have to take the steps to like, pay for it and to, take the time off of work or whatever. And it's a lot of planning, but it was still like one of those moments where I was like, oh, like you were saying, like it just makes it easier if you speak it into the universe. And I'm not all about like the manifestation thing. I'm partially about it, but I think that you really have to like focus on being intentional and actually taking those steps as well. You can't just sit and wish for things.
Oh, that was
but yeah, I do that exercise.
Just manifestation in the beginning of this journey. I'm like, well, I've read The Secret and then I read The Power. And so I'm like sitting there and I'm just like visualizing. I'm like, why is none of this happening? And then I just went off the roller coaster and I'm like, okay, that's all bullshit. But then when I started to understand, like kind of look at the quantum physics side, kind of look at what the most successful people do. And I'm like, okay, all those elements are there. You're just missing a key piece. You can't wait for life to come to you. You have to keep meeting all of these opportunities where they meet you.
Yeah. And I think that's really been so clear, like in all the research and work that we've done with this book, is that everybody has these goals and dreams, right? And like maybe they don't know exactly what it is. Maybe they say something like travel the world and they're like, but that doesn't, they need to be more specific with that stuff. But everybody wants something. And the biggest regret at the end of their life is not doing that thing, right? So it's like they might have been trying to manifest it or think about it, but they never took the steps. And the excuses that we got, the number one excuse was that I just never got around to it. And that's just unacceptable. It's sad. I mean, I felt so bad reading these things because if you just take the steps towards something, like you're so much more likely to get there if you just keep going, like little step by little step. Yeah, the number one reason, didn't get around to it. Number two reason, fear, which I think is probably, when you dig deep into the never getting around to it or saying you don't have time or money, the deeper part of that is probably fear. So you've got to help people get through these fears to do the things that they want to do.
I have been reflecting on this a lot recently because for some reason lately, it's becoming very apparently how differently I live my life than the average person. Probably because I was in Santa Monica for a couple of years and I was going to WeWork and I was meeting all these other people that were driven and going to these entrepreneur events. And so everyone was just kind of like me. And then I moved to the mountains and it's just a different experience, which is fine. But it reminds me of that quote that if you need something done, ask the busiest person you know.
Yes, that is so true.
From a couple of people, and I asked, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, I got to put like tight deadlines, and then I'm like, oh, it's just a quick letter. Can you do this in 24 hours? And people are like, oh my god, and I'm like, you don't have a job right now. I don't really understand. Like you're at home, you're watching The Bachelor. Like it's
honestly, it's so true. That saying is like spot on. Like, I swear to God, if somebody asked me to do, I'm really busy right now, but if someone asked me to do something, I'll just do it versus like, oh, I'm just going to do it next week because then it will never get done. Right.
I'll have it done in 11 minutes.
Yeah. Same. And also, so you lived in Santa Monica. I'm right north of Santa Monica. So I'm very familiar. Where in the mountains are you?
I'm in Big Bear Lake now.
Oh,
yes.
Well, let me know when I can come hang out.
Anytime. And so lately, though, in kind of having this realization, it's been making it a lot easier to continue my growth because all of a sudden I'm like, well, what am I doing differently than other people? And I'm like, oh, wow, I have to be so intentional. Also with kids, also with like all these goals. And you were talking about how you have to like meet life where it is. When something falls in your lap, there's still a bunch of planning that happens. And recently we had that experience where I almost feel like we were funneled into a move. Now, moving when you have like a 4-month-old and a toddler is not an easy thing. Mind you, we just got back from a couple-week vacation. We had catching up to do, but there were just all these signs. Like first, a house opened up just down the street. Then a bunch of negative experiences happened where we were. Then we looked at that house and it wasn't right. But then for some reason, the realtor kept pushing us towards another one. We're like, why are you trying to sell us on another house when it seems like we like this one? It was just weird because it was so much work, but I kept saying, it feels like I'm not doing anything. Like it feels like for some reason my legs are in motion. I'm packing up all my stuff. Like I almost couldn't say no. And I'm like, this is when something's meant to be. And it really was the best decision that we could have made. But yeah, it was a ton of work while also feeling like there was some sort of motion propelling me forward the entire time. And an older version of me, I remember sitting there thinking, having this belief that I wasn't the kind of person that could follow through on things anymore, somewhere in my 20s. And I was just like, how do people do that? Now I have the complete opposite belief. I'm like, I'm the person that'll follow through. Like, you need something done, give it to me. I'll have it done very quickly. I have a completely different self-belief. And it did take a couple of years to get there. But I think the biggest thing was that clarity part, because we'll have a goal. And like you said, it's not a real goal. It's like, oh, I want to start a business. And it's like, okay, but what kind of business? Who are you going to be serving? What's your life going to look like? What sacrifices are you willing to make while you're getting there? How are you going to restructure your day to have time for this? And so like, those are the steps that it takes. But the good news is once like that's the work, is showing up for those questions. And once you start to do that, then you know how you're restructuring your day. So then the next step is just restructuring your day. Okay, I have an extra 90 minutes if I stop watching Bachelor in Paradise after my kids go to bed. Yes, it's going to be difficult, and some days I'm not going to feel like it. So what's going to be my oh shit plan? All right. If I like, maybe just Fridays I'll take off or whatever it is, like build in all the things that you think are going to get in the way. And then all you have to do is kind of just like float down the river that you just built for yourself. And so I wish people understood that more, because things seem so daunting, but it's daunting if it's just floating around in your head. When you start to map it out, all of the most daunting goals become manageable, because you can just see it's like building a new neural pathway in your brain. And then when you start to follow those steps that you've laid out, all of a sudden you start to see yourself differently. You're the kind of person that can do this. And then you've been doing it for a couple of years and you feel like a whole different person. You have trust in yourself. You have belief that you can create big things. And so it's just, so many people are expecting other people or life to do it for them, when that's how you show up for yourself. But then when you do, all of a sudden magical experience seem to happen, and you just get calls with your ideal client or invited to India or whatever the thing is for you.
I mean, you are speaking my language, like exactly. That is exactly what the book is about. And it's, we have a little section that says exactly those words. Like, maybe I'm not the type of person that can climb a mountain or plant a million trees, or, even something as simple as go skydiving. I'm not that type of person, but I want to do it, but I'm not that person. It's like, but you can be. You just have to take those steps towards it, and then you're going to see yourself in a new light. Like, if I would have thought, like when I was a kid, like I'm going to write a book or start a company or whatever, like I would have been like, that's so daunting. But you can't look at this big daunting thing. You have to look at what can I do in the next 24 hours that's going to move this forward. And then if I just do that every single day, eventually it's going to happen. And there's like a snowball effect where it's like, okay, all of these things start happening. Like right now, it's like we, spent 2 years on the book and we didn't know if anyone was going to like it, right? But now it's out and it's done, and the response has been so positive and so good, and it feels so good to like share it with people. But like, if I would have just thought about this big thing first, I might have been like, oh, it's too much work, or it's it's going to take too much time or whatever. But it's so worth doing those things, because I always thought it would be cool to write a book, but I thought maybe I'll do it in 10 years or whatever. And then this crazy life thing happened in 2020 where we were just like, we're just going to do it now. And I'm so glad. Like, that might have never happened, right? If I just didn't like take those steps.
That exact experience happened with me with kids. I remember being like, okay, I said I was going to have kids at 35. I was like, I need 5 years. This was when I was 30. And then it was approaching, but I probably would have kept putting it off. And I remember looking at a friend who had 2 kids, and I was like, just takes so long to get there. Like, this toddler phase looks so cute, but I've got to get pregnant. And then I've got to be pregnant, and then I've got to give birth, and then I've got to go through this phase and then that phase, and to get to 2 kids. And even after having 1, I was like, now I got to do that all over again. And so instead of thinking about that, it's like when I go running, I was just thinking about this morning on my run. I'm like, I was kind of comparing some of the conversations I've had with friends I've went running with. And one of them kept saying, there's just so many hills. And I was like, oh, I barely noticed those. But then I realized I'm just focused on where my next step is landing, because there's a bunch of rocks and everything. And so I kind of zoomed out in my run, and I was like, oh yeah, this is a big hill, isn't it? And then all of a sudden I felt so much more tired. And I'm like, oh, go back to your feet. And I just started going back to that one foot in front of the other. The same thing happened with kids. And I just realized the other day, I had a flashback to that thought. And I was like, I'm at that point of when I was looking at somebody else thinking it's going to take so much to get there. And now I've got my kids, and now I'm starting to get a little more freedom to focus on something else. What I found is so many people talk themselves out of it because they're like, well, yeah, you have clarity. So of course, you know how to like take the steps to do this. And I've been interviewing a lot of people because I'm working on my signature coaching program that I'm relaunching next year. And what comes up for a lot of people, there's the camp that we've been talking about where it's like, okay, they don't have a belief at all of even being able to do something. So they've got to kind of get over that. But then there's this other group that, yeah, they can do some stuff and they have done some stuff, but their biggest dreams, there's this fear that they're going to spend all this time and it's not going to resonate with people, or they're going to stall out because they get burnt out from it, or they're going to realize they're going to be 6 months in and realize it's not really the thing for them and they wasted all this time. And so when you're creating your next big goal, how do you get clarity around that, or move through some of those internal objections?
I think that excuse is interesting. Like when people say like, oh, what if it doesn't work out? It's like, isn't it more important to try and to know that you tried and it didn't work out? Like, I think a very, very simple thing to reference for me could be like, I always wanted to like run a race, right? So I did like this half marathon thing, and then I was like, that wasn't really for me, right? I didn't love it. Like a lot of people love it, and I think that's awesome. But like for me, it wasn't really what I wanted. But I was like, I'm so glad that I did it and then I tried. And then now I don't ever have to like worry about that. And like, you know, that's probably not the outcome that I would have wanted, I guess. I probably would have wanted to do stuff like that all the time. But I think that you figure out what you don't like and what you don't want, and like in you know, stuff like you said, like if maybe it doesn't work out, but at least you tried. You know, like next year, one of my goals is to one of my big goals, very scary goal, is to write a stand-up comedy set. And I'm terrified, but I'm also like, I love comedy so much. And it's like one of my favorite things on earth. It's like music, comedy. Like it's like ingrained in me. Like since I was a kid, I've loved stand-up. And I've always thought like watching stand-up, I'm like, man, I wish I could do that. Like that would be so cool if I could do that. But I'm just not like, you know, good enough for that. But the reality is like, if I put it on my goal list and I'm like working on it every day, like just a little bit every day, and then at the end of the day, I have something and I have this like body of work. And even if nobody cares, like I literally don't care if anyone else likes it, because for me, I'm going to know that I tried and that I at least know that like I have that forever. And I'm not going to regret it at the end of my life being like, I wish that I would have tried this. You know, like at your funeral, no one's going to say like, she really like tried to do a lot of things, but she failed. Like people are going to feel like
she really embarrassed herself on Instagram the last 3 years. Yeah. Glad she's gone.
Oh, they're going to be like, that's so cool that you tried to like do comedy, and like that might have inspired someone else to do that, or it might inspire someone else to follow a different dream. And like just doing things and like gives other people permission to do things. So even if you fail, quote unquote, and by the way, failure is so ridiculous. Like nobody really cares, right? Like nobody's really like looking at you that closely to be like, oh my God, that person failed. Like they suck. It's not really like that. Like you're giving someone else permission to follow their own dreams, even if it doesn't turn out in the way that you think.
I have had a few experiences where I tried, or I started to do something. This was in a more negative phase of my life, but I started to do something, realized it wasn't really for me, and I started to create these internal narratives that like, okay, like I started to be afraid to try something new. This was a very short period, but I remember it vividly because it felt like crap. And what I very soon realized is, again, it's kind of this self-reflection period afterwards, because it's so easy to like, all of a sudden one thing feels bad and you apply that feeling to the entire experience, versus maybe it's just this one little segment. An example I can give that happened after I knew this was actually moving to the mountains. I was so excited. I'm like, okay, I'm done. It was 2020. Like, I'm done with being here. I want to go somewhere else. I want to be in nature. I'm pregnant. Like all these good things. I had a whole list of all of these good things. And then I got here and it was like a month in. Most food is making me nauseous, except for all this food I'm craving from Uber Eats down in Santa Monica that you just don't have here. And so all of a sudden I'm listing all of the negatives and I'm like, oh my gosh, I knew I jumped into this too fast. What I've been able to do since being in the mountains is, yeah, there are a couple of things that this town is lacking. have yet to find other people that are on the same path, whether it's spiritually, whether it's entrepreneurially. And so there was also a period of time where I'd be in friendship circles and I'd like try to go deep and like met with something about cheese sticks or something like that. And I'm just like, and I could just feel like unfulfilled. But then my new programming kicked in and it's like, okay, well, what am I needing here? How can I get this still? It doesn't have to come from this one thing. It reminds me of what I learned about friends a long time ago, where like I'd get really close to friends and they'd be like my bestie that I was always around. And then they'd respond to something in a way I didn't want them to, or my mom would, or my husband would, or whatever. And it's like, okay, everyone can't be everything for someone. This is my friend that I call when I just want her to let me vent. This is the friend that I call when I actually want actionable strategies. This is the friend. And so segmenting life in that same way, where recently I've really been kind of getting back into my groove of business, the freedom there. And I'm like, what do I need? I need these high vibe conversations. So now I have this book club set up with one of my friends and we post it on our podcast. And then I still have interviews like this and I have an accountability group and all of this stuff that I've been building up my life in a way where not everything needs to give me every single thing that I want. And I wish that people could see that more in their lives rather than just being like, well, that was disappointing. It's like, well, what part of it was disappointing? You don't really learn more about yourself until you take that time, that space to really reflect on it and ask yourself those hard questions.
Yeah. And like what you said about segmenting friends and stuff, that is so true. And it's so crucial. Like, so we have a whole relationships chapter in the book about how, like it's been proven that like the number one way to grow a relationship, whether it's like, you know, your boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, whatever, it's having new experiences with them. Right. And like not letting things like just get stale. So, but what a lot of people do is they'll be like, well, my friends don't really like to surf, for example, but I'm never going to because my friends don't want to. Like you can find another person that likes to surf and you don't have to involve your other friends. Like it doesn't have to be like just so concrete where it's like, well, my friends don't like it. So, and my boyfriend doesn't like it. So I'm not going to do it. Like, but if that's what you want, you need to like make that happen with someone else or just by yourself. And like, it's so crucial. I think so many people get held back by the people that are around them. And maybe that's not even like a negative on those people. It's just that they don't have all the same interests and they can't expect them to have all the same interests. And it's so true what they say about like, you are the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with. Because if you're around 5 people that don't want to try new things and never want to go anywhere or do anything, then you're also going to be that person, right? And so maybe what you need to do is find some other people in your life that you can add in that have those segments. Like, oh, I have a friend that I go, you know, shopping with, or I have a friend that I have those deep conversations with, or I have a friend that, you know, we take cooking classes together, right? But maybe those aren't in your current circle and that's what you want. So you got to just get out there more.
I could see how that would even be a way to expand yourself to things that you didn't know you wanted to try. Like, yes, I really want to try this. I'm going to find somebody else. And I'm the type of person where I've moved around a lot by myself. So I'll straight up find a Facebook group, people who surf in Big Bear, you know, like,
yeah, totally.
Be like, I need friends. Like, who's getting together? I've had so many friends that way. But then what opportunities are you not seeing in your current friendship circle? Because they're looking at you like, well, Melissa doesn't like to play mahjong on weeknights, you know, like, whatever it is. Maybe you end up hating it. Maybe it doesn't sound appealing at all, but like give it a try and see if there's anything you do like, or if that can reconnect that friendship in a specific way, because there also can be a downside. I noticed myself creating a narrative about specific people because I'm like, oh, they can't be this for me. They can't be this for me. They can't be this for me. And I'm like, that may all be true, but what energy am I bringing to that? And make sure I spend, like, these are valuable people. Make sure I spend just as much time. What can they be for me? What do they give me? When do I really feel good with this person? Because it's just so easy to accidentally evolve out of relationships that don't necessarily need to be evolved out of.
For sure. And it's so like, since you have 2 kids, I just want to say it's so important. This mindset is so important as a parent, and because like you are giving them the gift of all of these new experiences. And maybe you end up liking some of the stuff. Like maybe your kid it gets a bit older and they're like, I love wakeboarding. And you're like, I've never even thought about doing that. Right. But now you are interested in it and that you can share that experience just as like a random example. And by the way, what a great place to grow up. My God, Big Bear would be just incredible to grow up in. And you could do so much stuff outside there and like, wow, what a place. But yeah, for kids, it's so important for like these experiences. Like you could take something as very simple as like, instead of, ordering pizza tonight, we're going to make pizza together. And it's going to be this like bonding family experience. And it might cost, like less than probably $15 to get the ingredients for a pizza, right? But they're going to remember that. And they're going to know how to like make pizza dough. Maybe they don't remember in 5 years, but they'll have that skill. They'll have that like memory. Whereas like just ordering a pizza isn't the same experience. And then maybe you get really into it, right? You're like, I'm going to be the best pizza maker in Big Bear. Like you just don't know. You don't know what you're going to find like once you start doing a lot of new things. And I think that's such an important mindset for parents and for the kids and like how you bond. Like I wish that I had that when I was a kid.
When you were saying that, I actually have a core memory of the one time we made pizza dough from scratch. I don't even know how old I was. I think I might have been 7, but yep, it's a core memory because it was.
Yeah, you don't remember all the times you ordered pizza.
No, not at all. But speaking of kids, I know how you also teach about how important play is for, first of all, learning. I interviewed Stephen Kotler and he has this whole thing about kind of aging gracefully, his newest book, and a big part of learning new skills, he taught himself to basically be at the level of skiing that you're not supposed to be able to get at if you start at his age. But he brought all of his research on how to be like peak performance into this, and play, novelty was a huge part of it. But you also talk about how it's a powerful tool for actually shaping your identity as an adult. How so?
I mean, I love play. Like I'm just a silly human being. So I always have been like this. But for me, the best part of life is to play and to have fun and to just be silly, because it's just so serious. Life is so serious and so daunting and so dark at times. And if you can't laugh at things, then like, I don't know, it's just a waste of time. but I think shaping your identity, like for me, I want to be the person that my friends go to and they're like, this person's fun and they'll do this weird thing with me. Like they'll go take like a trapeze lesson with me, or they'll go like dress up on Halloween with me, or like do something that they feel like maybe not comfortable with other people doing. So a lot of adults, once we get older, we're like, we're not going to be playful anymore. We're going to be super serious and everything is very serious. But, for me, I always want to be like that fun friend and the fun person that people can come to and feel comfortable with, like being their inner child and like being silly. Like a lot of, an example is that I have a group of friends that every single year we go see Santa at the mall in Burbank. We sit in the same exact position. It's always the same 5 girls. We've done it every year for almost 14 years. And it's like, we just have that bond, like if I don't see them all year, which I usually do, but maybe some years I don't, right? But we'll always have like that one thing that we do together. And I think that's so crucial in having those bonds with the people that you love, and like having the ways to connect around it. And being silly is like the best way to connect with someone, in my opinion. I mean, being deep is great and I love to get deep with people, but like bringing out that inner child. Like, so for the survey that we did of 20,000 people, one of the questions was, what was your favorite thing you did as a kid? And do you do it anymore? And why not? Because usually the answer is no, right? So a lot of people say very simple things like, I used to love playing hide and seek, or I used to love playing truth or dare, or I used to love, chasing fireflies with a jar. It's like, and the funny thing about pretty much every single answer to this question is something that is free, but it's still so memorable to them that like, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, they're still thinking of this thing that brought them joy, and they could do it today. Like call your most fun friend and be like, let's go collect rocks on the beach. Let's go play tag. Let's go, all of this stuff is free. So for me, I guess shaping my identity is just I want to be that person. I want to always be able to be like lighthearted and fun when my friends need it.
Is there a spot for a sixth girl on Santa's knee? Because I want to be in this group so bad. I also do
Come
have
on in.
one session left of my 5-pack trapeze classes on the Santa Monica Pier. I also got certified
where I
in skydiving, and the moment I got certified, I just never went again. I was like, that was the goal, and now
Scuba diving?
no skydiving.
Oh, I still, it's funny is I still haven't done that, which is really weird for me because I feel like I would love it. But that's definitely on the list. And yeah, trapeze. I did the trapeze at Santa Monica. That's so funny. I thought it was so much fun.
Oh, it was a blast. There's something about when you were asking about those best experiences, I'm like, am I a bad person that we had like a TPing war in high school,
Yeah.
and it was so fun. But it was not just like getting out at night. A lot of times it was sneaking out at night, going to the grocery store. We'd also get like a pack of M&Ms on our way, and then we'd like get there, and there was the sneakiness and getting caught, and like trying to be creative with the TP. It really brought in everything, and I'm like, am I too old for this?
No, I honestly, if you ever want to go TPing, I'm super down. I was even worse though when I was a kid. This is shameful, but I would go TPing. I grew up in Michigan. I would go TPing. They have this thing in Michigan called Devil's Night. It's the night before Halloween, and it's chaos. But we would go TPing, and then the next day, my neighbors would just be so pissed. And I don't know if they knew it was us or not, but they would pay us to clean it up. Here's $5. I would be like, sweet.
This is the best money I've ever made. I had just heard about Devil's Night for the first time this year. My husband's from Howell, Michigan. And I was like, really? Devil's Night? What are you guys talking about? That's so funny. Well,
funny. Howell isn't that far away. Yeah, I know Howell.
We go there. Eventually, we're going to have a house there because we do have land there already set for us. But yeah, we go there every year for 4th of July. But going back to the question around, I talked about how a lot of times people don't bring enough self-awareness and they sort of paint an entire experience as negative because of one thing. But I know another one of the things that you teach is around reframing negative experiences overall, even if the whole thing was bad, into positive memories. So what's your process for that?
Sure. So one of the most interesting things in the study was that 1/3 of the 20,000 people stated a negative experience as their most valuable experience. And I would say I was part of that 20,000. For me, it was like this really crazy year where I got separated and I moved and I had my new place broken into several times. And it was really scary. COVID happened, like all the stuff with, my other company, like we had to lay all our employees off that were like a family to us. And like financially, it wasn't the best year, just like all these dominoes were falling. Right. And at the time I was like, this is the absolute worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I just was super depressed. And I had never been that depressed before. And to me now, looking back, in 2023, I absolutely think that was the best experience of my life because now I'm on such a better path. Like if I was still with, that person or still with doing, work that I wasn't like sure about or doing, living in that place or whatever, like whatever those things are, like I wouldn't be here. And I'm really happy now. And I've accomplished quite a few of my big goals, whether they're creative or work or whatever, in the last couple of years. And I truly don't think that would have happened without going through all of that. And now I live in a place that I love and I'm very happy and my mental health is much better. So, and I'm super grateful. Like every day that I'm happy, I'm like, thank God. Like, because I don't ever want to feel that way again. Right. So for me, negative experience turned into a positive, just took some time. So I think there's like a lesson in each big negative experience. A lot of people would say things like, my most valuable experience is when my mom got cancer. And then it made me realize like how short life is and how much I love my family and how I need to spend more time with them. And so, or it could be something like, when I was young, I was a heroin addict and it made me, that was my most valuable experience because now I work at a center where I help people that had those same problems. And everyone was saying something like that. And I just thought that was so powerful. Another way to reframe it, which is my favorite way, less deep, but it's so true. Is when you're going through a negative experience, think about maybe this could be funny in a year or 5 years. And I love to think about that because nobody, stories that you tell your friends, like say you're telling like a campfire story, it's never going to be like, I woke up and my day was great and what a wonderful day. You're going to tell something negative that happened and your friends are going to laugh, right? Because things over time, comedy plus trauma over time or whatever that equation is, it's like over time things become much funnier and much lighter, and you're not going to be really as interesting of a person if nothing negative ever happens to you. So I love to reframe it in like that light. And I love to think about the positives that came from things. Like when I was, younger, I got I had like worked my butt off to get into the music industry, and then I finally got a job. And it's like the best thing that ever happened to me. And then my office shut down and everyone got laid off, and I was like, ugh, like everything that I did was like gone, right? And I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened to me at that point in my life. I was like 21. And then what ended up happening is that I moved to Los Angeles, which I absolutely love, and I've been here 17 years, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me coming from a negative experience. So at the time, you're like, I got laid off, this sucks, but you don't know what's next. Like now I'm like, I can't imagine like living in my hometown and like where my life would have been. And like, no offense to them, but like, it's just not for me. And like, I grew as a person. Like when I moved here, I felt like anything was possible. And I wouldn't have never had that feeling if I would have stayed there in like the comfort zone of my hometown.
One of, well, my hands down worst life experience. I was in a horrible relationship. I had really low self-worth by this time. A bunch of things happened and I was letting life happen to me, and I was making meaning from all of the bad things about my own worth. And it was showing not just in what I was attracting, but also the choices I was making. And I was in this horrible relationship. Long story short, found out over time he was cheating on me, addicted to meth, gambling everything away. And the last one was I found out he was secretly robbing houses, and I got arrested with him. And so I ended up taking a felony to save him from having to go to trial. And just the dumbest 22-year-old decision ever. And so then I just had a felony on my record. But that experience pushed me into entrepreneurship because I'm like, how am I going to explain this in 2 lines of a job application? And it made entrepreneurship mandatory for me because I had too much pride to like start at the bottom. And again, explain, like I just couldn't explain it. I'm like, I'm going to need like 15 minutes of your time and I'm going to need to show you other documents to show like the kind of person I really like. I just couldn't have done that. Now I see very clearly so much of that, how it led to the experience that I am now. My husband and I were just talking about this. His like worst experience when he was in high school was something about his helmet being too small in his championship wrestling match, and he lost, which was like clearly going to win. And to that teenage boy, it felt like his life was over. Like this was his scholarships and all of this stuff. But then he would have, like right now, he's got a very successful web design company working with nonprofits. Whereas if he would have won, he would have been a wrestler in college. And then as something similar happened, he was on American Ninja Warrior and like his toe touched the water and they made the call that he was disqualified. It's like, I didn't even fall. Like, what do you mean? And so broken up about it. And I was trying to tell him in the moment, I'm like, we're getting married next month. I was like, you would have been like on tour with Ninja Warrior, right? When we're getting married, we had like this traveling the world plans that probably would have had to been canceled. I probably would have been so mad this marriage wouldn't have been working out. And so we're just reflecting on that and the just the other day and like where we are now compared to those moments, to just remind ourselves, like when something negative happens, it could just be one of my main messages has been when I speak publicly at universities and such is using your limitations as guideposts. Like, what if you really had the belief that everything is happening for you? And if you look at it that way, then you start to see like, okay, well, this is just eliminating a couple of options. Did I even want those? Now I don't have to question it because they're not on the table anymore. Let me just go full force this way, commit. Someone told me once that we only ever have 80% clarity and the rest of it is just committing to that plan. And so just thinking about those things is so helpful in taking life by the balls. Am I still allowed to say that in 2023? And just like going.
I think you should.
Right?
Yeah.
I
love
the
that
vulva for the women out there, however you want to look at it. And just going a little bit harder is how I like to look at it. Just stop making excuses for playing small. And so thank you so much for all of the research that you put into this book, for the ideas on how to implement them. I love leaving listeners with one specific thing to focus on this week, whether it's a thought experiment or a challenge or a bold move, to really ground it into action. What would you leave them with?
I think a really easy experiment / exercise that everybody can do that's free is, when we were doing our research, we realized that one of the top regrets of the dying was not keeping in touch with friends. And this is something that so many people said. And I think something for your listeners is to just take, 5 minutes today and write down a list of couple people that you would regret not keeping in touch with, and reach out to those people. Just send them, an email, a text, a phone call, anything like that. It's free. And, you never know how long your life is going to last, and you never know what is going to happen. So you can avoid this regret just by taking 5 minutes of your time.
I'm going to do that. I know exactly who I'm going to reach out to, and I'm going to ask if she wants to take a picture with Santa with me.
Yes. Oh my God, please send that to me. I will be so happy.
Well, thank you again so much. For listeners that are resonating, want to read your book, want to connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Sure. So my site is BridgetHilton.com and experientialbillionaire.com. And then I'm on Instagram as well, Bridget L. Hilton.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/333. Your challenge for this week is to make that list. Who would you regret not keeping in touch with? It doesn't need to be every single person, although it depends on your style of flow here. When my ADD brain kicks in, I tend to go pretty robust in this area, but it can be something like 2 or 3. Who are those people that you haven't spoken to in quite a bit, but you don't want them out of your life? You have to make those conscious connections. And usually when we're more willing to keep those connections, to reach out to the people we care about, the rest just follows. You decide you want to get together, then you have to think of something to do. But if you want to take this one step further, when you guys do get together, how can you add a little flair to it? How can you add a little flair anytime you're going out of the house? This is something I'm working on too. I'm in a season of goals. I'm so passionate about so many things I'm creating right now that it's very easy for me to just stay in my little podcast nook. I've decorated it to be exactly like me, so it feels so good in here. And then I have my family that I love. I've really curated my life to be something I enjoy just being in. But I know that a big part of the happiness is that connection. It's the core memories that get encoded because it's something outside the norm. So I'm taking this challenge too. Let me know how it goes for you. Reach out to me on Instagram at mindlovemelissa. If you love this episode, consider sharing it. Maybe that's actually how you reach out to a friend. Just share it with them. Say, this inspired me, let's hang out. I would love to be a part of that conversation. If you do use this episode to connect, please let me know. That would just make my whole week. I have so many exciting things going on. If you're not getting the Morning Mind Love, you're also missing out on a ton of other announcements, amazing things going on in the Mind Love world. So sign up at mindlove.com right there on the homepage. You can also reach out to me on Instagram. You'll notice that the content is flourishing there. Like I said, something big is coming this year, something that I've been working on behind the scenes for years, especially as I took some time to just be with my babies and my family. I was also perfecting an experience for you. So reach out to me on Instagram, go to my Instagram. It's all over the place right now. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about, or at least the sneak peeks until it's ready to be announced. And finally, you can find all of my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors with the links for discounts and all of that jazz. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.